Darius Coleman valued his privacy above all else. He wasn't the kind of man to seek unnecessary attention or engage in idle chatter with neighbors. He worked remotely, kept his home in immaculate condition, and preferred solitude over social obligations. The people in his suburban Missouri neighborhood knew him, but only in passing. He wasn't rude, just distant, and that suited him just fine. At least, it did, until one ordinary afternoon turned into something straight out of a crime thriller. The trouble began when Darius noticed his internet acting up. Video calls were lagging, music streams stuttered, and downloads took longer than usual. He assumed at first it was just an issue with his provider, but something about it nagged at him. Trusting his instincts, he decided to check his router settings. That's when he saw it. A device connected to his network that he didn't recognize. The name wasn't just a string of random numbers and letters like typical unknown devices. It had been deliberately labeled Crestwood I-1. His brows furrowed in confusion. He lived alone, never shared his Wi-Fi, and had no reason to believe anyone else should have access to his network. It was unsettling. Annoyed, he quickly removed all unfamiliar devices from the network and reset his password. As he stood outside for better reception while making the changes, Melanie Foster, his neighbor, spotted him from her kitchen window. Melanie had always been wary of Darius. She didn't know him well, but his reclusive nature made her uneasy. He wasn't like the other residents who attended community barbecues or stopped for casual conversations. He kept to himself, and that was enough for her to assume something was off. So when she saw him standing in his driveway, rapidly typing on his phone, her imagination leapt to the worst conclusions. Her heart pounded as she watched him, convinced he was up to something shady, hacking maybe, but what? Her mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. She didn't wait to find out. Instead, she picked up her phone and dialed 911. Yes? "I'd like to report suspicious activity," she said in a hushed voice, eyes still locked on Darius. "My neighbor is standing outside doing something on his phone. I don't know what, but it doesn't look right." The dispatcher asked her for details, but Melanie had none to offer beyond her gut feeling. That was enough for her. The police were on their way. Meanwhile, Darius had finished updating his Wi-Fi password and was about to head inside when he heard the sirens. He didn't think much of it at first. This was a quiet neighborhood, but police responded to calls all the time. It wasn't until the squad car slowed in front of his house that he realized something was wrong. Two officers stepped out. Detective Navarro, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a sharp gaze, led the way. His partner, Officer Bell Carter, followed, a compact but formidable presence. Darius sighed as they approached, sensing trouble. "Sir," Navarro called, his tone firm but neutral, "we received a report about suspicious activity in this area. Can you tell us what you're doing?" Darius blinked in disbelief. "Suspicious activity?" "I'm changing my Wi-Fi password." Navarro's eyes flicked to Carter before returning to Darius. "Do you live here?" Darius almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. His car was parked in the driveway and his name was on the mailbox. "Yeah, I've lived here for 3 years." Before Navarro could respond, a voice rang out. "He's lying." Darius turned. Melanie stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching like she had just cracked a major case. "He's always outside, messing with his phone, looking around like he's watching people," she continued. "Now he's been standing in the same spot for 10 minutes, just typing away." Darius exhaled sharply. "I was checking my router settings because someone's been using my Wi-Fi without permission," Melanie scoffed. "Oh, sure, and I'm just supposed to believe that?" Navarro turned to her. "Ma'am, do you have any evidence that Mr. Coleman has done something illegal?" Melanie hesitated. I don't know. I just think you should check." Navarro, patience thinning, turned back to Darius. "Sir, would you mind if we take a quick look at your router settings, just to clear this up?" Darius clenched his jaw. He shouldn't have to prove anything, but he knew how these situations could spiral. "Fine." He unlocked his phone and pulled up the settings. "Here, take a look." Navarro scanned the list of connected devices. His expression darkened. "Crestwood I-1, who owns that?" Darius shook his head. "Not me." Carter leaned in. "So someone's been using your Wi-Fi without permission?" Darius nodded. "And I don't think they were just stealing internet. Look at the connection logs. It's been running non-stop." Melanie, standing nearby, shifted uncomfortably. "Wait." What do you mean? Darius's jaw tightened. I mean, someone has been watching, and not just me. A heavy silence fell. Melanie, who had been so certain she was in the right, suddenly felt uneasy. Navarro straightened, his tone more serious. Let's go inside. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. Inside, Darius mirrored his router settings onto his laptop. The device list appeared again. There it was. Crestwood I-1, still connected. Officer Carter peered at the screen. Can you see what kind of device it is? Darius clicked around, his fingers moving fast. Not exactly, but he froze. Navarro noticed his expression change. What is it? Darius's throat went dry. It's been accessing camera feeds. The room went silent. Melanie paled. I don't understand. What camera feeds? Darius turned the laptop to face them. Mine. The logs showed repeated access to his home security cameras. Someone had been watching his every move for weeks, but as Darius dug deeper, a chilling realization settled over him. The access wasn't just limited to his cameras. Other feeds appeared, multiple, from different homes in the neighborhood. Navarro's jaw tensed. This isn't just someone stealing Wi-Fi. Carter's voice was grim. This is surveillance. Melanie swallowed hard, her paranoia now replaced with dread. So, you're saying someone's been spying on all of us? Darius nodded. And the real question is, who? Darius Coleman had always preferred to keep to himself. He worked from home, maintained his property meticulously, and avoided unnecessary social interactions. His neighbors barely knew him, and that was exactly how he liked it. But one seemingly minor decision would thrust him into an unwanted spotlight, setting off a chain of events he could have never predicted. It all began on an uneventful Thursday afternoon in Crestwood, Missouri. Darius, exhausted from a long morning of remote work, decided to take a break. His internet had been slow lately, buffering during video calls and stalling while streaming music. Initially, he assumed it was just a temporary issue with his provider, but something felt off. So he decided to investigate. Pulling up his router settings on his phone, he scanned the list of connected devices. One unfamiliar name stood out. Crestwood_101. Darius frowned. He lived alone and had only a few devices, his laptop, phone, and smart TV. He never shared his Wi-Fi password, so who else could be using his network? Annoyed, he removed all unknown devices and changed his Wi-Fi password. Stepping outside for a better signal, he leaned against the side of his house, typing in the new credentials. That was when Melanie Foster, his neighbor, saw him through her kitchen window. She had never trusted Darius. He was too private, never attending community gatherings, never stopping to chat. Now she saw him standing outside, intensely focused on his phone, fingers moving rapidly. Her mind jumped to the worst conclusion. He was up to something suspicious. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "There's a man outside my house acting suspiciously," she reported. "He's been standing there for a while, doing something on his phone. I think he might be hacking something." The dispatcher asked for details, but Melanie had none. She just had a bad feeling. "I just know something isn't right," she insisted. Minutes later, sirens pierced the quiet neighborhood. Darius looked up from his phone as a police car pulled up in front of his house. Two officers stepped out. Detective Louis Navarro, a tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp features, and Officer Bell Carter, shorter but exuding quiet authority. Darius sighed. "Here we go." Navarro approached with measured steps. "Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity. Mind telling us what you're doing?" Darius frowned. "Suspicious activity?" "I'm changing my Wi-Fi password. Someone was using my network without permission." Navarro exchanged a glance with Carter. "Do you live here?" Darius scoffed, gesturing at his parked car and the nameplate on his mailbox. "Yes, I've lived here for 3 years." Before Navarro could respond, Melanie's voice cut through the tension. "He's lying. He's always outside, watching people, messing with his phone. Now he's been standing there for 10 minutes, just typing away." Darius turned to her, incredulous. "I was in my router settings because someone has been using my Wi-Fi." Melanie crossed her arms. "Oh, sure. That's convenient." Navarro turned to her. "Ma'am, do you have any proof that Mr. Coleman has done something illegal?" Melanie hesitated. "I just have a feeling." Navarro exhaled, patience thinning. He turned back to Darius. "Would you mind if we check your router settings just to clear this up?" Darius clenched his jaw. He didn't owe them proof, but he also knew refusing would only make things worse. With a frustrated sigh, he handed over his phone. "Fine, look." Navarra and Carter leaned in. As they scanned the screen, Navarro's expression shifted. There it was. Crestwood_101. Navarra looked up. "Who owns this device?" "Not me," Darius said. Carter's brows furrowed. "Someone's been accessing your Wi-Fi without permission." Darius nodded. "And not just stealing internet. Look at the logs. This device has been connected for days." Navarro's posture straightened. "Days?" Melanie suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Wait, what do you mean?" Darius turned the screen toward her. "Someone's been using my Wi-Fi to access camera feeds, security cameras, not just mine, but others in the neighborhood." Silence fell. Melanie gasped. That's impossible." Darius clicked on another log. A dimly lit hallway appeared, then a living room, then a bedroom. Melanie gasped again, staggering backward. "That's my house." Navarro's tone turned sharp. "How is this happening?" Darius's fingers moved quickly. "Someone in the neighborhood set up a fake Wi-Fi network, one that looks normal. People connect to it, and their devices get compromised." Carter's face darkened. "A man in the middle attack." Darius nodded. "Exactly." Melanie clutched her arms. "So you're saying someone's been watching me? Watching my family?" Darius met her eyes. "That's exactly what I'm saying." Navarro wasted no time. He pulled out his radio. "We need cybercrime support now." Darius kept digging, tracking the IP addresses. His stomach dropped. "It's coming from a house just a few doors down." Melanie's face went pale. "No, it can't be." Darius clenched his jaw. "It's Brandon's house." Melanie's nephew, a quiet, tech-savvy college student who had moved in months ago. She shook her head. "No, Brandon wouldn't." Carter stepped in. "We need to talk to him, now." Melanie hesitated, then nodded. "I'll take you to him." Navarro and Carter followed her to her house. She called for Brandon. No answer. Navarro knocked hard. "Brandon, this is the police. Open up." A chair scraped. Footsteps. Then the door creaked open. Brandon Foster stood there, eyes darting nervously. Navarro got straight to the point. "We have reason to believe you've been accessing private security cameras. Care to explain?" Brandon's hands fidgeted. "That's crazy." Carter's voice was firm. "Mind if we check your laptop?" His jaw tightened. "You don't have a warrant." Navarro stepped closer. "We can get one, or you can tell us the truth now." A long pause. Then Brandon exhaled. "Okay, I was just messing around. It was a joke." "So you admit to hacking the network?" Brandon hesitated, then nodded. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just curious." Navarro's patience snapped. "How many people have you watched?" Silence. Then a whisper. "I don't know." Melanie's breath hitched. "Oh my God." Navarro didn't wait. "Brendan Foster, you're under arrest." As the cuffs clicked shut, Melanie turned away, tears in her eyes. Darius stood watching, arms crossed. Navarro met his gaze. "You were right." Darius exhaled. "I was just changing my Wi-Fi password, and somehow I was the one who got the cops called on me." Melanie swallowed hard. I was wrong." Darius gave a small, cold smile. "Just do better." Then, without another word, he walked back inside, leaving Melanie standing alone in the street, haunted by the weight of her mistake.